Deathwatch.
Okay, so because our Game Master Brandon is absent this week, we are going to discuss The Wheel of Time, both the books and the role-playing game from Wizards of the Coast. So let's begin with some introductions. To my right, I have Justin, who plays the Woodsman Falk.
Hello.
Then we have Chris, who played the Accepted Adina, or Initiate, I suppose is the actual class. Did you make it to Aes Sedai?
No, next level. They're initiates. That's what they're called, the class. But technically, she's accepted in power. Yeah.
I myself played Rafe, the Wanderer, and finally we have John, our game master for the Prophecies of the Dragon campaign.
Hello.
So I thought we would start with you, Justin, since you are kind of the origin point to our introduction to the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
When did you discover Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time?
Let's see. That was, about 20-something years ago?
Yeah.
I got a book recommendation from a staff member at a bookstore. I got the first 3 books and started reading it, and it kind of infected everyone around me.
Like a disease?
Kind of, yeah. It was almost an epidemic. It went from one person, and then 2 people started reading it, and then...
Who'd you pass it off to first?
I think it was you first.
Yeah, I didn't read it right away, though, so Brandon caught it.
Was it because it had stupid cover art?
No. Do you guys ever experience when you read one author for a certain amount of time and then you switch to another one, how the writing style changes?
Yeah, it trips you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. And I didn't know how to explain that because I was 14 or 15 at the time.
Yeah.
So I told Brandon that it had too many commas.
Makes sense to me.
So yeah, you passed it off to Brandon.
Yeah, and I think Josiah read it shortly after that.
Yeah, and I finally picked it up because Brandon also recommended it. So then it was probably you, right, Chris?
Yeah.
At this table who next got into it?
And I'm pretty sure that I still probably have those books.
Justin's books?
Yeah. I got a whole box full of Justin's books that I've borrowed over the years from Travis, and then they just never make it where their destination's supposed to be.
So then which one of us infected you, John?
I think it was actually you. I had gotten the books, of course, from Justin, and I read a lot of his library that he had, but I think it went back to your... what was it? Loud reading that you always did. Yeah. It was forcing me to to hear stories back in the apartment there. But it wasn't that bad listening to you, except for when it was either you or Brandon started reading a magazine.
Oh yeah, or the phone book, or we would read. We would sync up. We're all reading a different thing.
Yeah,
that was weird.
I think there was a Hobbit era, wasn't there? Yeah, I enjoyed the Hobbit era.
So did you actually play the role-playing game before you read the books?
No, I read through all the books that had come out up to that point before we started the game, before Prophecies of the Dragon.
Because, not to jump ahead, but he knew about Shadar Logoth.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there was a lot of...
That's true.
A lot of metagaming in those early role-playing games.
So, Justin, what, after all these years, do you think in general of the Wheel of Time series? How many books is it? 14?
I can't remember. It's 13. Yeah, something like that.
A lot of words.
Yeah.
How's it held up? Because you read it when you're an adolescent.
Yeah, I actually read it several times. Up until about the 11th book. I reread every time a new book came out. So yeah,
you stopped doing that at the 12th book?
Yeah, once Brandon Sanderson took over, I was an adult and didn't have quite as much time to throw at it. So, yeah, for those ones I didn't reread everything. I think I reread the book before just to get caught up.
And see, I reread all of them, and then each release I would either reread them or listen to them.
Yeah.
So it was...
you did that for every book?
For every one that they released after, yeah.
So you read Eye of the World, what, 13 or 14
Yeah.
times?
it was really good. It just, after like 10th time, it doesn't...
Be honest, did you skip the point of view characters you didn't like in the reread?
Mostly, yeah.
Based on other series that John has read,
He might have skipped
he'll
the
skip
entire
whole books.
I will if I feel that I need to. Although I did go back and read Wolves of Kala.
Sure, you did.
I did, actually.
It was-
I didn't
was it-
just
I
throw
thought
it behind
it was
the
Song of
seat in my
Susanna.
truck.
It was Song of Susanna, I thought.
Or was it?
Yeah.
There you go.
So if you skip a book, if you are to reread The Wheel of Time right now, which book are you skipping?
Ooh.
Let's
Say
see.
Crossroads, everybody knows.
No, I don't think it would be that. And I'm trying to remember exactly which one it was, but it's where it's.
How dare you?
So, Shiloh, I hate you.
If you were to use a book to beat Shiloh to death, which one of the series would it be?
Which one was the thickest?
Lord of Chaos.
There you go. Which actually it's right in there.
Oh wait, didn't the last one eclipse Lord of Chaos for long?
I think it might have. Yeah.
I think Lord of Chaos is more suitable.
All I remember of I can't remember exactly which title it was, but it dealt with what was it, Nynaeve and Elaine when they were traveling as part of the menagerie. And all I remember is just days of reading about clothing descriptions.
My guess is Path of Daggers. Is that what you're
I
saying?
think it was about
about right.
4 or 5.
Oh, was it before
I
then?
thought it
I thought it
was.
was later than that.
It might be though. I mean, it's of course been a little while.
So yeah, what about you, Chris? Which book do you skip on your reread?
That's a tough one. Oh man, they all have something in them that I've read up to that I kind of like part of. Maybe what was it? Winter's Heart, where Fail gets kidnapped.
Yeah.
The entire book of Perrin bitching and moaning.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people lose respect for Perrin during that part of it.
Yeah, like it would almost be book what was it, 4, where he goes back to Two Rivers. Like something happened. Like he used to be my favorite character back in the day, but I just can't stand most of any scene with him in it if he isn't killing something.
Yeah. Well, I think he comes back around if I remember right. I liked all his parts in the final 3 books.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't completed the series yet, so
What? Justin.
I bought them. I passed them along. I don't know where they are at this point. So
Behind you on the bookshelf.
We got
There they
2
are.
copies of Towers of the Midnight.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were just going to Justin for which books he.
No,
skipped.
also which books? What are you skipping?
I think it was it Crown of Swords, where it was basically all like Deus de Mar throughout the entire book,
Yeah.
and in the very end, he kind of like gets a wild
It's a
bird
downer.
and just kind of decides I'm going to go take Iliad in a single day. And,
Yeah.
Yeah,
like it was like
Storms
600
it up.
pages of just intrigue and
Yeah, and he did a
Talking.
lot of moping. Rand did a
Yeah.
lot of moping around with men.
Yeah.
And then he finally gets a burr in his saddle. And
yeah, it was like right at the very end. He's just like, I mean, I feel like doing something. I haven't taken a city in a few days, so
that said, I was pretty intrigued with that scene. Because that's the one where he battles Samuel and
yeah,
in Shadar Logoth. And there was that at the time, because the 7th book was the most recent book when I was reading. At the time, like that guy that helps him out in Shadar Logoth, like I can't remember if I had any clue who that was.
yeah.
You know, so you're like, what's going on? Was that the creator?
Yeah, I do remember there was a ton of that like speculation after that happened, like whether that was
channeled
Luce Theron incarnate or the creator or one of the heroes of the Horn of Legend or something.
yeah.
So in that part, I always thought that it was Rand's madness, that person wasn't really there,
Yeah,
and it was just his Luce Theron madness, basically.
I can't remember if they ever like actually said what that guy was or
I think it's quick, or it's amazing how quickly I forget, even though I've done a reread within the last 2 years. But that's Moradin, right? Because their Bellfire streams end up crossing, and that's what causes that connection they have ever after.
Also, there's lots of hints that he channels, but Rand doesn't feel it, and all that stuff.
What about you, Travis?
Crossroads of Twilight. It's a common fantasy pitfall where you'll have a part in the series where your book deals with one set of characters and the next one deals with the other set, and nothing actually new happens in that next book. And it was also when he started to slow down, which, he didn't slow down very much as a writer, so the wait got a little bit longer. So it was like, this is it. I remember I finished it when we were at work, John. Yeah. And I closed the book, and I'm like, this is it? Like, what? What did I just read?
No, I do remember that, actually, is you like, after I watch a movie, right, is I'll usually try to not discuss anything for at least a little while, right? Maybe an hour or two.
Let it ruminate on you.
Yeah, and that's really what it reminded me of. Yeah. So I thought that, like, well, it must be really good. Like, something really crazy happened to make him be quiet like this. Because you weren't your usual chatty self at work.
Well, one thing I could count on with Robert Jordan, and it's one of his strengths, I feel like, is he knows how to write a climax for the most part. Because his series is that many books long, and they usually always have a memorable climax, and some of them are the most memorable climaxes that I've read, like Dumais Wells at the end of Lord of Chaos. Where was I going with this?
The fact that what was it?
Oh, right. So this is one that did not have a memorable climax. So he broke the chain of that, and it was very disturbing.
You broke it, Jordan.
So we got whichever book Nynaeve and Elaine were with Fallon Luca's traveling show. Yeah. We got Winter's Heart. We got Path of Daggers. Or Crown of Swords. And then Crossroads of Twilight. And those are all in the slog, I think. What's colloquially known as the slog.
So what was your favorite then?
That's a tough one. I'll go with an odd pick. I actually like The Great Hunt a lot.
That was a good one.
I liked Rand, Hurin, and Loyal palling around through the Portal Stone worlds. That really kind of fired on all cylinders for me, and it has a good end to it in Falme, or it might be Falm. I think that's how the audiobook says it. So, but I've been saying it Falme for
20 years.
Yeah, so it's hard to stop it. That's actually a good thing. We just kind of bashed our least favorite book for a little while, so that's a good segue into our favorite scene or book.
Honestly, it's probably The Eye of the World.
Yeah.
I think that was the one that really hooked me on it.
Just all downhill from there.
Not necessarily all downhill, but I think that had some of my most memorable moments, like with the Green Man and their first trek into the Blight, and that frenzied rush as they went into Shadar Logoth. There were just so many parts that it hit on so many different levels that it all kind of came together.
So what's the one sequence above all?
I think the battle at the Eye of the World. Yeah. With the Green Man sacrificing himself to literally rip apart. Who was it? That was Bilal, or
they had.
I can't remember.
Was it Agenor and Balthamel? Is that who they had there?
I mean, the first one.
Yeah, at the Eye.
Yeah, I believe that it was.
Was it Agenor that he ripped apart? Like he kind of did that tree thing where he grew into him.
Well, it was a bunch of things that grew in the dark, mushrooms and stuff like that. Really like that scene.
Yeah.
I also like the whole chunk of describing traveling without giving it a name, because Rand at that point didn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
It was Agenor and Balthamel.
And it was that first showdown with Ishmael.
Yeah. So when you were reading that book, did you have any, when did you know that for sure Rand was going to be the channeling the Dragon Reborn? Spoilers.
Is that a spoiler at this point?
Technically, yes.
We'll just put a warning at ahead of it.
I think it was probably in Camelin. Like, there were certain points in Camelin where like he just seemed different. Like that Matt was there, but it wasn't like Rand was really more the focus.
Yeah.
And you kind of tell that there was something different about him.
I suppose a big clue was that he was the point of view for, 70% of the book?
Yeah. Yeah, there's also that.
What about you, Chris, Eye of the World? Like, is there any particular scene in there that stands out to you?
Ooh. Dang. Yeah, there's a bunch. Like, I think it's like a coin flip between that and Lord of Chaos for my favorite book that I've read of there. I think Entering the Ways and that whole trek was pretty good. I enjoyed that. That feeling of oppression and that something that was once a good thing could be so corrupted by the taint. I like that whole idea. The Blight was real memorable. But man, like when I was reading that back in the day, I was like 14 or 13 because I remember reading it in school. And I was just a big old dummy. Like, I didn't know Rand was able to channel till he got a hold of the Eye of the World.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what the heck was going on at that whole thing. I didn't know he was channeling until they said, like, I think I could channel or something like that at the end.
Same here. I mean, I kind of had a suspicion, but not really. I was still... It could be any one of the three.
Oh, the thing about Eye of the World that makes it up there with like Lord of Chaos for me is rereading it over again, picking up all the parts where Rand's actually channeling earlier, and stuff like that. But I think probably the most memorable scene for me is when the two Forsaken show up. You know, their entrance was pretty spooky for me when I was a kid.
Yeah, because one was like so damaged from being sealed close to the bore. He was just wearing a mask, right?
Yeah, one was wearing a full mask that was like laughing or something, and then the other was just so old.
Agenor was the super old one.
Yeah, but they're kind of seeming to like Agenor seems to sort of be getting stronger, younger or something as the fight was going on, if I remember correctly. And they seemed spooky. They seemed like otherworldly people that had sold their souls to, this world's devil. And they were kind of terrifying, whereas I think their threat, the Forsaken in general's threat, is kind of diminished as the books go on, where they're a bunch of petty, jealous...
they become more human and fragile as it goes.
Yeah.
John, what about you, Eye of the World? What's your scene?
I would say when Matt and Rand are traveling to Camelin, and I can't remember what the inn or the innkeeper's name, but the thin innkeeper.
In the Four Kings?
As the one that, I mean, not just that part, but from there on their travels to Camelin, right? Sure. I mean, it's really kind of the struggle that Rand has, the helplessness that you feel. He's got pursuers that are, out of myth chasing him. Yeah. He's got people that are actively trying to detain or waylay him, and then he's got his buddy who is, after they get out of there, blinded and going crazy. Right. And he just doesn't. I mean, on top of that, he's trying to figure out his own thing. Right.
I feel proud that I have forced the word waylay into your vocabulary.
I just thought about that as I said it too. I was going to make a comment as to where that probably came from now.
A good scene in that whole section too is the first hints of Ta'Veren really ramping up, I believe, where you have that dark friend try to like talk to Rand, and he ends up confessing essentially that he's a dark friend.
But they did show like a lot of like the vulnerability, like when they're traveling and they talk about how they've had nothing to eat for days except for cold water from a spring.
Farmers sicking their dogs on them all the time.
And at that point, then they find, of course, the one farmer who lets them stay and gives them some food and sends them on their way. But also the feeling that you get when they finally arrive in Camelin, like, okay, now their whole ordeal's over. And even though they do meet up with some of the past characters and some new ones, it steadily gets worse until all of a sudden it's a little bit better, right?
And more frantic feeling.
Exactly. But that depressive kind of no hope feeling that I always get when I read through that part. Like, that's honestly, I don't mind reading The Eye of the World because of that section there. And their whole travel, I've reread just that section more than I've read the books, right? And that one always, I don't know, always gets me a little bit. It's like, man, it's just like, what would you do if you were in a situation like that? Could you make it the rest of the way? You know, would you even want to?
Getting pursued by fades and Trollocs.
And you got to remember that Matt is slowly descending into the depths of Shadar Logos grip.
Which I want to... It culminates in one of my favorite lines in that book when they finally reunite with the rest of the party. And Moraine comes into the room there, and Matt's, threatening her. But he describes Lan as moving to Matt as if he didn't bother with the intervening space in between. And I was like, oh, Lan. Awesome. But I would agree with your pick. That's mine too. That's like a good example of Robert Jordan's excellent world building, in my opinion. And he just kind of lets you live all this experience in perhaps excessive detail or excruciating detail.
Yeah.
Like the journey on the road, like a lot of those stops you probably could have cut, if you needed to, but I appreciated them.
Yeah.
And then getting to Camelin was like huge. Like I felt like a country, boy arriving at the big city.
Yeah, the description is they start to come to the outskirts and they're starting to get to more and more farms. Like I was the first time, and even still when I reread, if it's been a while, I still get excited when I see that now they're coming to more and more farms.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get more populated, and because you just know it's like, okay, there's got to be people that are going to help them here, right? I mean, this was their goal, was get to Camelin, but also it should make it harder for the people or the things pursuing them to actually get to them. Mm-hmm. And then, it's just a huge triumph at that point. And of course, when they get there and no one else is there, I mean, it's just kind of crushes a little bit, but overall, I mean, the atmosphere of the seems to pick up a lot more because I don't know, almost like a new horizon, right?
Yeah.
I also think that it's one of the few times where the aftermath of Taverin, as strong as Rand and Matt passing through, is actually fully noted.
Yeah.
Because Moraine is able to follow that path of weddings and random deaths and happenstance.
Yeah.
And that also goes to I believe it's either the Great Hunt or the Dragon Reborn. But when Rand, I think it was the Dragon Reborn because it's after they get Matt blows the horn. But when following Rand through, that goes to show how strong he is, because the effect of two Taverin moving through caused as much damage as Rand moving through himself at that point, right?
But for the most part, I think it was probably the most conscious effort to describe the effects of Taverin. After that book and maybe Dragon Reborn, it kind of starts getting pushed more to a side thing. Like you'll hear passing comments as opposed to actually, kind of dwelling on the fact that someone choked to death on a feather.
Yeah, or occasionally somebody will note
fall out of a third-story window on your head and live without a scratch, right?
Yeah.
I think some of the Aes Sedai start to note when Rand has traveled back to one of the cities because, things start getting a little weird. I guess that goes into the Great Hunt, which is the Great Hunt, which is one of my favorites. And my favorite sequence from that one is the Portal Stone. Not Rand and Loyal Traveling. I do like that. But when they use the Portal Stone and it starts flickering through all
the possibilities.
Right, yeah. I don't know. It really caught me up in it, the way he wrote it. Because he didn't often... He used a really, functional prose in his writing for the most part. But occasionally he would get into this more... I don't know what the term would be. I guess somewhere close to poetic, and that was kind of in that vein, I don't know. But what did you think about the Great Hunt, Justin?
I thought that had probably some of the best character development out of all the books, because the entire way that they're going there, you see the relationship between the Shannara soldiers and their interplay along with Rand coming to terms with who and what he is. And then on the side note, you've also got Matt's journey during that whole time down to Tar Valon and all of that. I mean, I think that was probably my favorite part of that book.
Yeah, you start to see him. Was it in that one? I forget, or is it in the third one where he gets rid of the dagger? Is it the second one?
It's in the second one because
Yeah.
he gets rid of the dagger and then he ends up.
Yeah, so you get to see him begin to come into his own tavern, whereas before, it just wasn't that noticeable. But his dice start tumbling, and away Matt goes.
Yeah, and I loved the descriptions of him eating right after he got healed.
Made me hungry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like 3 chickens would disappear and he'd look down and they'd be gone.
At the
He'd
time,
still
I
be
didn't even
hungry.
like mustard, and I think he had mustard on his plate and like peas and the chickens and roast beef, and I was like, I want mustard. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then was that the first one where they had the gray man?
Ooh, wouldn't it?
I want to say that's the third one because that's
Well, there was the
Moraine.
gray man that tries to kill him on the bridge.
Yeah,
and
he wonders where he came from.
yeah.
Yeah.
And,
so
and that whole concept
that's
was
the
something
first
that.
hint of one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Dragon Reborn was where the Darkhounds come in, right?
And a gray man.
And a gray man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Perrin's able to smell them.
Yeah.
But that's where they get named. Darkhounds are cool too. But
What about the Kyrianan sequence, Chris? The Dias Daimar, the Rand accidentally
yeah.
being an awesome Dias Daimar player.
Yeah, probably one of my favorite tropes in television
Yeah.
too is the accidental awesome type thing. I don't know why, and it's just funny as hell to see all these people trying to scheme and manipulate
Yeah.
an actual force of fate, essentially.
So why do you think that trope's kind of fun? Like, what's fun about that trope, do you think?
Well, personally, I think it's because we're all a little bit, or I think everyone's kind of awkward in their own way, and so that allows your awkwardness to work in your favor as opposed to making you feel like a dumbass.
Yeah. What did you think about the Kyrianan sequence?
Yeah, as far as the Dias Daimar, even though I can see some parts of that where it would interest me in real life, and reading about that didn't really pique my interest too much.
Yeah.
Because
Politics.
yeah, and because the overall politics, especially with what they were going over, had absolutely nothing to do, it seemed like, with really any of the outcomes that we had.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a filler almost, right? Good idea, and it, again, is something that would probably interest me more if it was a real life situation. But
Yeah.
reading about it, I would have rather have gotten back to some of the other
The adventure.
storylines. Yeah.
Although it almost seems like the first probably 3 books are mostly him world building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a good introduction to the character. Right.
Yeah, and it's a precursor to the 3 books he spends, being just completely entangled in it.
And then you have another 3 books of him kind of getting all the Westlands under his yoke, and then you have a bunch of books of very precise or slow, boring plot movement depending on where you fall.
Yeah.
And then it kicks off from there. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. If I had to level a criticism, but I'll pivot back out of it after I do it, at the Dias Daimar, his version of political intrigue, is that it seems like it's designed to be easy to grasp, and so it doesn't get extraordinarily deep. Like they have rules that the reader will pick up on, so they'll kind of know how it works.
Yeah.
And it's kind of how he built most of his cultures. Is so you knew this is how the Kyrianan were,
Yeah.
and you could grasp it easily.
Well, it kind of reminds me, looking back on it now, the difference between Littlefinger in the Martin books versus the show, right? Like Littlefinger doesn't even really talk to Sansa outside of a couple sentences here or there. It's he goes all through proxies, whereas in the show they're like, oh, he's a schemer, we need to show him scheming, and it's like, you just completely wrecked whatever Littlefinger was.
But the pivot to it being good is that he has a lot in his books, and so using quick, easy to grasp sort of surface level ideas when you have all these books and all this stuff going on. I think it works perfectly in that case. Because as far as the Kyrian intrigue goes, it's really just world building, right? It doesn't affect the overall plot, like you mentioned earlier.
To the same point, not in the same book, but when Rand brings all of the Aiel through, that did entertain me quite a bit because they still tried to play their game, right? And the Aiel just weren't having any of it.
And I think that's like like Travis was sort of saying, like you got the first 3 books kind of world building, and then like the next ones are him kind of bringing it under his thumb. But the thing is like from a reader and an author kind of standpoint, you're also seeing whatever culture that he established in the first books get stripped away to a certain aspect because
well, it has to be simple enough that you can retain it when you learned it in book 2, when it will play in book 5 a little bit or something, right?
The one criticism I do have for his books is that he very rarely has characters that are expanded from like their country of origin. Like if you're a Terran, you act like a Terran the entire way through. There is no changing, no accepting of another culture into who you are.
I could be mistaken, but I think that trope's called the Planet of the Hats, and it's based off of how Star Trek would go to a planet, and everybody was the same way.
Yeah.
Well,
so like his cultures were all that.
I think all of the side characters that's true for.
Yeah.
But like Nynaeve and Elaine were constantly adopting cultures.
Yeah.
Nynaeve would complain about, whatever aspect it was, but she would still be wearing the dress. What's his name? Was it Julian? Their thief taker. He, like his idea of adopting culture was adopting their headwear for the most part.
Yeah.
So I think it does show like Rand's constantly like Rand doesn't need to adopt a culture because he's going to force a change on the world. That's his goal. But he was always wearing the local dress and trying to follow some of the local rules that he thought made sense and stuff like that.
At the same time, I think about the type of world that they're in. Is yes, we're seeing them travel all around Randland there, but really, how many people would travel very far outside their village, or if at all, right? So, and just because someone's in a bigger city like Tyr, they may never get out of Tyr, right?
Yeah.
And with the size of some of those cities, I think about it even now, right? Like we go to all these other parts of our own city because we have the transportation, the means to do so. But if you had to walk everywhere, would you really go, to the movie theater way out?
Yeah, but like the ones that I'm more talking about are like the soldiers were like a really stark example because you'd have the armies that would come together under Rand, but like there was no real mingling between the troops. Like they always talk about how the what's her name?
The Wing Guards?
Yeah, the Wing Guards.
Yeah, Mainers.
Yeah, they were always their thing. Then the Terrans were always in their section. Then
think about that though, because in the period that this is set in, I mean, this is still rise and fall of kingdoms can come pretty quickly. So you've got Maine. I don't know how they pronounce it, but you have that sitting right next to Tyr was right next to them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they were always trying to make the land grab because what was it, oilfish?
Yeah.
As they were always trying to make the grab for that, and they're trying to maintain their independence. They know that they're so small that they can get swallowed up, and the only way that they had maintained their independence was through that doorway which somebody gave away, right, as a gift. And so how else are you going to do it, right? Do you really think that even though you have to, we're fighting to save the world, do you really think there's going to be camaraderie between two enemies?
And it makes sense for like the more nobles, like the people that are actually playing that game between the two. But the common soldier,
I think that it makes sense for the common soldier too.
Well,
if your family starts killing my family, are we going to pal around all the time just because we're traveling in the same car or to the same state? I mean, that's the idea around it. Is just because they're all going to the same point doesn't mean that they're going to be friends. These people have been fighting for who knows how long, right?
I'd also throw out there that Matt's army kind of takes care of that aspect.
Yeah, Matt's does.
Homogenized,
And who else had something like that? Was it
Maybe
Perrin?
Perrin.
Yeah.
And then well, does that? Well, it kind of reminds me of the Greek city-states in a way.
Yeah,
I wonder if it was modeled after their behavior, because they, like, individuality was sort of behind the attributes of the city-state, you know. So if you were like Thracian or Spartan or something like that, they had these attributes they could give you from our viewpoint back in history. So I wonder if that's what he was kind of going for.
Yeah,
but it is a valid criticism. But, like, how could you correct it? Could you add more words to another, you know, to an already long book? And don't you find it useful to have such a simple idea for how these people are when you're juggling, you know, all these different city-states or nations, I suppose?
It doesn't have to, like, add too much to it. Like, just, like, I've seen other books where, you know, armies that were enemies start fighting together, where a commanding officer will be walking through and they'll note that these soldiers are dicing together.
Yeah,
just something simple like that, you know, the common everyday things.
Yeah,
that like those kinds of just little comments can seem to make a big difference to me, at least.
Yeah. It could really be that he just didn't put something like that in there.
Yeah.
I mean, because honestly, I don't remember a whole lot of those commanders walking through anyone else's camps but themselves, right?
Yeah.
They walk through their camp, and, you know, maybe if there was another commander from their city, they might walk through theirs, but I just don't remember anybody but, like, Matt or, you know, Rand, you know, Perrin maybe, right? The main characters really walking through those areas. But you know, I definitely understand where you're coming from on there.
Well, at the end of the day, I think it's probably just shorthand for NPCs are gonna NPC essentially.
Yeah, that's true.
They're a bunch of side characters, and
they weren't even named. They're just groups of people. Yeah. And you know, a lot of point of views for people that were looking at their army makeup were also from characters that were resisting their position, you know, like Perrin looking at his, he didn't want to have anything to do with it for like 10 books, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, he wasn't giving it like a close examination, like, say, if Bashir had a expanded point of view or something like that, like some war-hardened veteran, you know.
And that said, I guess I think Bashir was the one that worked with Matt to make the crossbow,
the Legion of the Dragon.
So I think that's where your camaraderie's coming from. It's just that I don't think that Jordan wanted to touch on it on the more personal level. It was more on these are people that are going to die anyway, so I'm just going to focus on the main character type level.
Yeah, but with how much time he spends talking about various clothing styles, it seems like they're like just a little bit could have been cut out of that and put into a little bit more of the
1000% agree with you.
I have an example to illustrate why I think it was important he did that, and I think there's more than one, but it's when there was a gray man attack on, I can't remember which book, but it starts with all those descriptions of just boring stuff, and he throws in the gray man coming into the room.
Yeah.
And then there's some more stuff, and then there's the gray man moving.
And then it's, wait a minute.
If he was a really lean writer, like, that sequence wouldn't have worked, and it was pretty cool. And I'm sure it's happened other times. All right, so speaking of long, drawn-out clothes descriptions, I suppose that leads us naturally into the set of books that is known as the Slog. Although that skips over book 6, so maybe we should pause there for a moment, because I feel like a lot of people enjoyed Dumas as Wells, and I certainly did. So let's hear from you, Chris. What did
favorite part of book 6?
Yeah.
Oh man, you can't really get over that part where Rand busts out of that chest And like if the Ashaman hadn't been there, it would have been one of those oh crap moments for everyone else around, because you have a couple hundred basically meat grinders show up, but it is kind of a oh no. I think all of Dumai's Well, you can't go wrong at Dumai's Well.
Yeah, how long was that sequence, like in page count? Does anybody know?
Oh no,
or like roughly?
I don't know. It's like the last fifth of the book.
Yeah,
it was a long,
because really that whole sequence starts, with Perrin's withdrawal from Carheen, all the way through where they actually, the marching, the finding them, and then the battle plan, and then the surprise of, it was quite a bit.
Yeah, I think another part that I'd say is like close second is just the Aes Sedai ploy leading up to that, where they just lure him in like a like a fish or something like that, and then he suddenly realizes, oh no, I'm surrounded by 13 women that can channel.
that is actually outside of the Dumai's Well portion. That's one of my favorite sections, is because he's so full of himself. He's like, I've got this, nothing can touch me, and he's just so cocky, and then to so quickly be brought down.
Yeah, that's true. Well, interestingly, I don't think it improved that much, because when you think about the manner of his escape, and I mean, he's almost worse off after he comes out of the box. Plus, he's got like PTSD about it. Or whatever.
I think his arc is supposed to mirror Egwin's. Like Egwin is going to pay for the sins of the women in the past that failed to go with the men and seal the board, right? So that's why she's got to die, and I think Rand is also kind of mirroring her. She's essentially a female savior, and he's a male savior.
So they both have their period of captivity, which kind of colors their character ever after.
Mm-hmm. Although, as far as his arrogance, it's kind of hard to like really pinpoint whether it's actual arrogance or whether it's a show. Because if I remember right, just before they take him, like he puts up that I can't remember what he calls it, but the screen so they can't see Min in the corner.
Yeah.
But he says something about you have to start from a throne, because if regardless of whether or not you come down from there, they'll always remember that that's where you came from, or something along those lines. And he talks a lot about, how to get the upper hand on these women that are supposedly, the puppeteers for the entire world.
Yeah, and when you think about how long they've been manipulating things in the background, or even in the front, how long ago was it that he was on the farm with Tam? Right. So I can definitely see that a lot of it is show, but it's I don't know. Just the thought of that is, because that's a little bit of being showing off to her as well, right? Yeah. Is you stay here and you can I know that he's using her to view the images as well, but it's really just like a watch me type move.
Okay,
it was Egwin.
Oh, was it?
I couldn't remember which one it was.
That's right. It wasn't Min, huh?
But he did usually.
Min was in the chamber next to him.
I don't think he really ever hid her.
He usually had her with him at his side.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's even worse then.
But because that was part of the thing, like they were worried that the plan wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But when they got in there, they didn't feel that there was another female channeler in the room.
Yeah.
And they went forward with it.
Yeah, no, that's even worse, because at least if it had been Min, she would have been used to seeing it. But with it being Egwin, she had just made contact with him, if I remember right. Wasn't that? Because she had been hiding out in the city. Or in the tents.
Yeah, she was hiding from the other Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And she was there from it was like the second to last meeting that we actually view. That's when he hide in plain sights her in the corner. But she came with him out of the waste. Like she's.
That's right. Now I'm for some reason I'm thinking of was it Gawain?
Or Gawain.
Yeah, she was hiding. That's right. She met him in the city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when
And for that whole,
when you have a million books.
yeah, that whole section with him, acting arrogant and wrathful and all that kind of stuff. Part of that, I wonder if it's just Jordan trying to convey someone who had led such a simple life where everything was straightforward, and dealing with these arrogant, entitled Karahanin nobles constantly scheming and him just being sick of it.
Well, I think once again you see a mirror in Egwene, where she has to learn how to act as she becomes a leader too, and she becomes exactly like Rand for the most part, arrogant, pushy. But in both cases, you have the benefit of seeing what their thought process is for the most part. Rand's is usually a whole lot of hoping he's not insane yet, whereas Egwene is a whole lot of justifying what she's doing because she has to act a certain way. And for the most part, Rand does that as well. And so I think that's where a lot of that arrogance is coming from. Like one of Moraine's last kind of things for him was kind of how to act. Like she was tutoring him in book 4. Constantly on how to be a noble and how to rule with the appropriate amount of power and dignity and all that stuff. That
was part of the deal she struck with him, wasn't it? That she would be subservient as long as she was allowed to teach him.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to add, is that the arrogance disappears when you have his point of view.
Yeah.
And
Same with Egwene.
Right.
Usually, like, she'll be saying, like, Rand's an idiot or doing something that makes you angry if you're reading from Rand's point of view.
Yeah.
But once you get over to her point of view, I found in my last read through that she's not that bad. Like, I didn't dislike her anymore. I only dislike her when I'm reading from Rand's point of view.
Yeah.
And as the series progresses, the amount of space Rand has as a point of view character gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
So all you see is somebody looking at him kind of reacting to how he looks. And you know from his personal story that he's just been trying to make himself into steel, and it's a struggle. And
plus he's always wrapped in the void at some point, which doesn't help with your social skills.
Yeah.
So he was always kind of uncertain and fragile, I suppose, and that just shattered him pretty much, Because then I think that's when the rage really starts to creep in as post Lord of Chaos.
The madness didn't help out in the box, and it amplified everything.
So what is so satisfying about him breaking out of the box and that sequence, the battle, the result of the battle? Because for me, well, let me back up a step. Him getting captured, it didn't matter to me what Rand's flaws were. I was firmly in his camp as a reader. So I was angry at the situation he is, and I was like, these Aes Sedai need to pay, because I didn't like the Aes Sedai at that point. I felt that they were a stuffy organization, and they seemed to constantly make mistakes, especially with Elida at their head. Yeah. So, I mean, was that as satisfying for you guys as it was for me when it gets out of it?
Yeah, and for me, I think it was just a testament to Robert Jordan's writing style in how he wrote Rand, probing at the shield, finding those points, all like the details on like him frantically trying to do something to get free, and that claustrophobia being stuck in there with his madness.
Yeah, and a cool way for the hero to escape on their own without it feeling contrived, because it fit within the laws of the one power,
Yeah. I think it was kind of like a period at the end of the statement of Rand's character, right? Because he wouldn't have been beaten and put in the chest, but he tried to escape and killed some warders with his bare hands, right? That happened off screen, and that's like badass. But so he kind of brings on the beatings himself, but it's that kind of a dog at the end of a leash, or you're not going to get chained down type of mentality for me, right? Like, he's unbreakable. He might be fragile in some aspects, but right now his will, you're not going to best him, you're not going to break him. And then he pops those knots in the weave and busts out of that chest, and it's like
I got a sick vindication that he stilled some of the channelers holding it.
And that's kind of to touch on that, sort of, it's kind of that weird humanization that Jordan seems to do, but for some reason forgot to do with the commoners in the army, which was, the Aes Sedai are saddened that they're going to let that one Aes Sedai beat the crap out of them morning, noon, and night.
Yeah.
Because, they were just going to keep them, shielded and bound or something, and he wouldn't have to be in the box, but he killed those warders.
Yeah, the part that stands out to me the most is really the coming up of the Ashaman.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely enjoyed him Rand going through the whole ordeal and then still having the strength and will to break out of that, but really showcasing these are the weapons that he wanted.
Yeah.
Right. That's what stands out to me more than anything. And the reason why is because when I look at the Aes Sedai, it reminds me of almost any story that you read of someone in power, right?
Yeah.
Someone who has almost absolute power to do whatever they want, and it doesn't matter that we can see their flaws and we see the mistakes that they're making, because even if they see them, they come from a standpoint that they are not wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And so everything that's happens, even up to that point, them letting the one Aes Sedai beat him because her warders got killed, that still comes from a standpoint of we're in control. We're the ones who make the decisions, and this is just something that's going to happen because we're right. Right.
Yeah.
And so that didn't stand out to me as much. His whole being bound in the chest and the beatings, but really what Duma as well stood out as is just the showcasing of the weapons,
The nuclear option.
yeah, because that's the big point.
But I for the most part, I agree with you, but I keep getting off on my point when I try to make it, and that's perception is what Robert Jordan is good at.
Yes.
Yeah.
We know that the Aes Sedai don't want Rand beaten because it's stated, but they're going to let that one do it. But everyone around them is going to perceive them as cruel and
Yeah.
Rand isn't that arrogant or very hard, steeled, but everyone else around him is going to see that, and I think that's a lot of what Lord of Chaos kind of showcases is perceptions being wrong.
Yeah, it turns everything on its head. That's actually because your reader perception at that point, if you think about how expertly constructed the forces that are gathered there are, like it's well designed, because you have Aiel, which are like the strongest fighting force, and then you have the Aes Sedai, which were the one power users, and then the Ashaman come in, and they're like totally different. They didn't spend like 10 hours in a meeting to decide something.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. We have the perception of the Aes Sedai as being an all-knowing puppeteer, but they're scared, and they're getting scareder each day. Then you have the Ashaman, the perception of them being these insanely deadly, vicious things, but most of them are farm people. So again, we have the mixing of perceptions, how one is perceived and how one actually is going on there. I think it was done masterfully in book 6.
Me too. Well, we'll have to stop at the slog, but we'll give you the final word, Justin.
And I think that's one of the things that made Robert Jordan one of my favorite authors is, well, he does have the slog where it's just kind of everyday stuff that's a little bit boring to read. He transitions at certain points into almost a more poetic writing style that is just captivating.
Yeah, definitely. And that whole sequence had it for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess maybe we'll have to get together sometime and do the back half of that series.
Maybe I'll finish them by then.
Right. So we'll move on to the Wheel of Time role-playing game. Does anybody know when that came out?
Oh,
2001 or 2002 maybe?
It's somewhere in there. It was around the time Sotero was born, right?
Yeah, it'd be 2002.
Well, so the Wheel of Time is licensed by Wizards of the Coast to make a pen and paper role-playing game based off of 3rd edition D&D at the time. And it seems like it grabs from D20 Star Wars and other stuff. So 2001. So we must have picked it up shortly after. I think I was 19 when we were playing that. So
That's right. She wasn't born yet, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We started when Megan was still pregnant.
Yeah. Sorry, Jess.
Oh, no problem. So this actually starts the same way as the books. Justin is our gateway game master.
Yeah.
I don't remember if you picked up the book, though. Did you buy the book?
I bought the original rule set and put together kind of
At the apartment.
Yeah, it might have
Oh,
been.
wow.
Yeah, that's when I made
Yeah,
my
it was
first
right.
character.
It was before we all moved
Yeah.
in next to each other.
It was when we were in the process of making our own games. And
It used it was like Risk.
Yeah.
You rolled
Yeah.
D6s
Yeah.
against each
Mix
other.
of Shadowrun and Risk.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's an aside. So let's reminisce on your initial Wheel of Time stuff. Do you tell us as much as you can remember about what you were doing with that? Because I remember very little.
Well, I remember, like, before we did the Prophecies of the Dragon, I think someone else got the Prophecies of the Dragon.
I did.
Yeah,
But no, I had, started a campaign to kind of hit up a lot of my favorite points in the game, like Shadar Logoth, and I think that was where John had his most masterful metagame ever.
I do remember the Shadar logo.
Deciding that
interestingly, and I apologize for interrupting, I had not gotten to that point in the books. It's the fact that everybody else around me was like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah, it spread to a guy we had at the table who hadn't even read the books.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
he picked up on it.
Sally.
Anyhow, sorry.
Yeah. It just started with wanting to kind of take the characters to some of my favorite points from the books. And honestly, I think one of my favorite NPCs of all times, I think his name was like Talon or something
I
like
vaguely
that.
remember.
Yeah, you ended up co-opting him in one of your campaigns
Yeah.
later on. But
So what was the opening? You ran the adventure from the back of the rule set, right?
that was how we started in Camelin, yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think we went down to Four Kings.
So we did that 3 times in total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm still at 2.
At 2?
Yeah,
Did you
because I
just
came in a bit later.
Okay.
But yeah, from there, I think you went down through Four Kings and Whitebridge and Shadar Logoth. And
Okay. I remember my character. Do you remember your character in that one?
Yeah, I was a male channeler.
Yeah.
yeah.
It was highly ineffective, if I remember.
Well,
though.
We
had
wouldn't
to-
let you channel.
Yeah, I could not get past the block
Yeah.
when it counted, right? Like if we were just sitting in a camp somewhere, then at that point I could do stuff occasionally. But if it was in combat, I couldn't make the concentration check to get past the block that I had.
Even without the block, we still had to do concentration checks in
Yeah.
those days because we didn't
We
understand
rolled
the
it
rules.
on every.
Yeah.
So I guess the trade-off was we got to cast 2 weaves
Yeah.
in a round, but we had to roll a concentration check on every. So we did the rules wrong. We thought we could cast 2 weaves in
Yeah, 'cause it
one
was an
action or
action.
one round, and then we thought you had to concentrate every time you cast a weave.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that started the long process of arguing rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, which in the end made everybody understand the rules better.
Well,
Because Brandon's not here, I have to bring up
yes.
that Justin's run through Shadar Logoth involved Brandon picking up a sword,
I thought it was an axe.
a weapon that he kept and began to go crazy and decided to try to do some assassination work, which led to Brandon trying to climb up a wall that he failed to do countless times and eventually led to his character charging through the front gates and getting horribly murdered.
Front gates of a White Cloak compound.
It doesn't matter. That's just but anyway, the point is that from that day forward, Brandon hates Justin.
Anytime
And
Justin has
hates
to make
climb
a climb
checks,
check,
which he has
makes it
recently
pay.
gotten even with me for my climb checks down the waterfall.
Oh no, he's
in
only
his
just
campaign.
begun to
Yeah.
get even. This is 22 years almost of.
No, that
wasn't-
that was where we had the argument of the spinning a horse bonus.
I think that was a one-off.
I
right?
think that was a different game because
Yeah.
Dale and Josiah were in there.
It was in the same world though.
It was in the same world, yeah.
Dale
There was
was-
argument that you should get a higher defense bonus because if you were on a horse, it would move.
Yeah,
It would be spinning. Yeah.
They were.
Like when you say spinning, though, I think of like a top.
Yeah.
Like the argument was that it would be moving around itself, so it would be harder to hit you by one of the other players that was playing at the time, which
It should also
seems ridiculous. But
well, it was. He was arguing the height should get him an extra defense, and I think it was against another person on horseback.
Yeah, so it was like a light horse versus a heavy
Versus a
horse.
heavy
and he
horse.
described
the heavy
them
horses.
as being, I don't know, 5 feet.
that's
in height
also
difference.
the same session where the O-Gear sunglasses came in.
Yeah, there was that. What were some of the other ones?
Well, I believe Brandon has brought it up twice in our actual play stuff, where I held
Yep.
I don't know, half a dozen stable hands
Yeah.
Yeah.
at the bow point, I guess.
Two
But I was
rivers
doing
longbow.
it a 2 rivers longbow,
One-handed.
one-handed,
Yeah.
while I was tying them up.
drawn.
Yeah. Fully
Drawn,
drawn, ready to fire in case they moved. Yeah.
And
I think it was a strength check or something, right? That was too low.
Yeah, I don't remember what.
well, I have to give you points then. That's a good example of using the yes and or the yes but philosophy of game mastering.
And
Justin, good job.
Much in line with Justin's DCs from that era, Travis was under the constant threat of every one of those stable hands becoming an elite Fade or Gray Man.
Yeah, that
That's
is
what it
my
felt
defense. I have rarely been in a role playing situation where I felt that that threatened. And these guys, they were stable hands.
Yeah. Yeah, they were just. And, even out of game, they were stable hands. Like, they weren't soldiers or anything like
They
that.
didn't have all 20s.
No. And, like, that whole assault that you guys did on that farmhouse was just, like, overwhelmingly brutal for the situation.
It was like Tombstone when they're, just before
Yeah.
the shootout at the OK Corral. We're all standing. Well, it's just me standing there, I guess, with. I don't know how I was doing it. Maybe I had the.
I imagine like
fletching
your
in
foot.
No, like how it was described by Dale was you knocked it and then took your finger that would normally stabilize the arrow and just wrapped it around the arrow.
Oh, he lawyered it for me.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess-
Yeah.
Jeez.
But, yeah, that
Imagine
was the
test,
same.
the-
That was the same, like, assault on the farmhouse where, like, someone knocked on the door and then hit a servant that opened the door with a hafted axe.
Who did that?
Like, I think that was Brandon.
Yeah.
Well, didn't your character leave after that one for a
Yeah,
bit?
yeah. So that's actually a good because that was the early days of role playing, and I think
Personalities could change on a dime.
well, that's part of it. I always had that. I wasn't a pacifist, but I was just a Barrelon guard was his
Yeah,
backstory.
you were lawful.
So I wasn't into killing people out of hand, and I felt that had happened, and I think beginning players fall into that trap a lot because they write down how their character is, and that becomes like the law.
Yeah, checklist.
When really the first law should be that you have to filter all that through operating as a group, right?
Yeah.
Because if your one little cool thing you like compromises the group, then you failed as a player, right?
Yeah.
So,
That or have a second character
Right,
ready to
yeah.
go. Yeah.
but I was, I think I actually remember being somewhat upset in real life about the fact that that guy was killed and that my character's moral code was not honored.
But I forget. Was that one of those ones where you start going off and had to come back? Though
I did
because there
come
were
back.
Trollocs in the
Yeah.
forest or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, good job, Justin. You roped me back into it.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how, but yeah.
I think it was around the time that those fists were out in number, right?
I think that might have been how you guys ended up at Shadar Logoth. Was after that you got chased
we
in
were
there by the
running from
Trollocs.
Trollocs.
Yeah,
Good times.
but yeah, like for a simple go to this farm and talk to this guy, you guys took it like way out of hand.
Hey, it's not our fault you game mastered it Tarantino style.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny to look back on that.
Yeah.
Whereas, was it the last time I raided a farmhouse was under one of Brandon's campaigns, and we were under the assumption going in that they were all like demon worshippers, and so I killed some people, and I felt really bad because I found out that they weren't demon worshippers. Whereas, back then they were basically GTA NPCs.
So does anybody remember any of their characters' names from that one?
Oh, I think I might have been in Omsford. Or a lay?
Yeah, I
Lead?
know.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
I think they all were, because at that time most of my characters were some
Yeah, other...
name from some fantasy novel I read. Yeah, so you actually had to ended up stopping your role of game master. Was that because Satara was about to be born, or?
Yeah, it was right after she was, or right around the time she was born, because I was working two jobs and had a newborn.
I know I used to joke about it, saying that I have to quit playing because my art is suffering. I don't know why that happened.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think that was
everybody
Josiah.
started. Yeah.
Right.
I think everybody also started to have a reason why they weren't going to make the game.
yeah,
right?
it was kind of petering
And
out.
even though most of us lived in the same house or right
can't
next
make
to everybody else.
I don't have a job.
Yeah.
But I can't play. Yeah, I actually took it over for a little while, but I remember zero of the subsequent stuff. So I think it petered out pretty quickly, and then
Yeah, there's a crossbow thing that I can't remember, because I know we played 1 or 2 sessions at the apartment, and I think that might be where that's coming from. Like, there was some fire and some planes and some crossbow shooting, but it's like so hazy.
Yeah.
That was from our homemade game. That was the one where... Are you talking about the one where well, no, that wouldn't have been...
No, this one wasn't the homemade one, because one of the people was using a hafted axe, and we were marveling at how much damage it was doing. And I think I was having to fuss with a heavy crossbow. Use the
I
winch.
do remember you doing that. Yeah.
Was it one of our Commoner's Day Off ones?
No,
I don't
the
know.
Commoner's
That's
Day Off.
one of the ones that I remember.
Although that's
most
a good
vividly,
thing.
though.
That's a good segue, actually, because I think the initial run of Commoner's Day Off, and just so...
It was a downtime thing, wasn't it?
Well, that was the only rule set we had. So, I mean, if we had D&D around, I'm sure it would have gone that way first. But we just had Wheel of Time. In fact, we didn't even know Wheel of Time was based off D&D when we were playing. Anyhow, so Commoner's Day Off is a style of play we do where it's really underpowered. You play the commoner NPC class, and we've had
Try to get an actual heroic class.
Yeah.
we've had some remarkable one shots off them, but they don't ever seem to go into a full on campaign.
Yeah.
So who you said that's one of your good?
Yeah,
players?
that. So I remember I believe it was the first one with me and Chris, and
Going to our cousin's house or
Yeah, we were
something?
going to our cousin's house, and it very quickly, within minutes, just chaos.
Yeah, well, what was it? Like something bust through the door and stabbed him or something with a
Yeah,
dagger?
it was. I think it was just a dark friend, or either a dark friend or just another commoner with a beef. But I remember we were just there, and all of a sudden we picked up hafted axes because we got to have a weapon, and we just started going to town, fighting. Then on the run,
Yeah.
and trying to escape. Where were we? Were we in Camelin? We were visiting Camelin.
Yeah, I think all I remember is we end up eventually getting enslaved in Ibudar.
Yeah.
That's how that one ended.
And it is, you were like gladiator fighting.
I
Yeah,
don't get that
because
part,
we started out we went to Camelin. We came from, I believe we came from a farm.
Yeah.
And that was for some reason that was why we had axes, but I have no idea why we would have hafted axes on a farm.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the Hangover movies, but with commoners.
Yeah, let's travel all the way from Camelin to Ibudar on the run, and just
Picking up other commoners along the way.
Yeah, and in every stop, it just degrades into all-out fighting.
Orgy of violence.
Yeah,
But I remember it being exceptionally brutal. For
it
whatever
was.
reason.
That was. So that actually.
Well, yeah, like that. Our cousin had like 2 hit points, got stabbed by a dagger, and was at like -4.
Yeah, and that really just set the tone of the campaign that we had.
Yeah, like the unfortunate thing about them is they're usually more comedic, like you said, Hangover.
Yeah.
And where they really shine is that later one we did, where it was more serious,
Yeah, because
but
that
still commoner. Yeah.
The reason why that one stands out to me the most is that in a lot of the early role playing, my thought process behind it was really just be as brutal as possible, right? As a player or as a character could, But that was one, because of how out of hand it got. That completely changed my outlook on the way that I should run my character.
Need to chill, guys.
Like that one, because I think that was one where I was originally thinking like, okay, I'm not gonna just like, I'm a normal person, so I'm not gonna be like this savage, bloodthirsty
Murder hobo.
Yeah, and that's what it actually turned into.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because you kind of had to respect the threats in the world in a different
guards
way.
mess you up.
Yep, as anything could. And you get kicked by a horse, you're dead.
Yeah, that was it. I think we made it to level 3 commoner.
Yeah.
In that one, that's our longest running commoner.
Yeah.
Yep.
So did you play in any of those?
I played in one. I think it was a completely
The
separate one.
later
though.
one, probably.
Which one?
The later, because we
There's been
ended
like
up
3
with
or 4.
Yeah, 3 or 4 of them. But the last one we did, I think you play is the one that you played in, because that's where we had a bigger group than it was. Because it was normally like me and Chris and you, just getting together, doing whatever we could.
Yeah. So is there any other notable runs in the Wheel of Time besides when we get to Prophecies of the Dragon?
I'm trying to remember, where did Will come from?
Will was from that second Commoner's Day Off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think he's a notable one. He's always a returning feature in any form.
Yeah, he's in some ways, I guess you even used him as Dill.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just the
It was I just in case anybody remembered, I didn't want to name him Will, but I was going to.
quick thinking.
Well, it's still got to pay respects, man.
No, that's fine. I mean, he's so much of a trope that I couldn't really put a claim on him. But sometimes those are the best to go with because they're easy for the game master to run.
Yeah, the only thing we were missing was the Saracetti from this
Right.
last run. For those that don't know, Saracetti is always a woman who is sort of a temptress that appears to lead our heroes down the primrose path, and she usually
He's a liar.
Yeah, she usually presents herself as an Aes Sedai, but most likely can't channel at all.
Yeah.
And then Will, again, is like the plucky young thieving kid with a heart of, I don't know.
Pure blackness.
So all of that previous gaming was kind of like a prologue to, I suppose, some more serious campaigning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the Prophecies of the Dragon. It was a campaign book written for the Wheel of Time pen and paper role-playing game, and I bought it at the game store that was near the house I lived at the time, and I just bought it because it looked interesting. I didn't have any intentions to run it or anything, but I read through it and I thought to myself, perfect. All the work is done for me, and there's no way the players will make any decisions different than what the book outlines for. And yeah, that was my premise going into it, and it actually ended up being, I mean, despite the different choices you guys would make throughout that I wasn't prepared for, it ended up being a pretty good time all in all. Enough so that we end up running a second time here.
Yeah.
But I guess, what are your guys' memories from that first time through the Prophecies of the Dragon?
Before we start on that, just to give some perspective, so we started playing Wheel of Time in 2001. Prophecies of the Dragon was 2012 when it was released.
No way, it can't be.
Yeah.
Because we played it, we started playing it,
That
we
was
either
in the
started in
corner
the
house.
corner house or we started,
Prophecy of the Dragon, we started in the trailer.
yeah, I was pretty sure.
I want to say maybe the second trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a gap because we stopped with Wheel of Time because we just couldn't get anything going.
Went
right?
BattleTech.
And we did like BattleTech, the MechWarrior one.
Yeah.
What else? Did we do a little Shadowrun?
else then?
Huh? Shadowrun?
Did we do a little
Yeah,
Shadowrun?
that's where Johnny Predator
Yeah.
and his House of C4 came from.
Yeah. And that's always a bear of a system to get into the
Yeah.
first time. I mean, I struggled mightily with the Wheel of Time one, or
Yeah.
I guess we all did for a little while. Then when you switch over to Shadowrun, but that's beside the point.
Oh wait.
So I think it was 2002 that we started playing it. Or
Don't worry, we'll edit it out, John.
or perhaps 2003. But I think
That's
we
weird.
played it over the space of
It says that it was released in 2000,
before the book.
January 1st, 2000. That doesn't make sense.
Well, whoever was putting it up there probably couldn't be bothered to do the fact finding for a little campaign.
It's a book.
Anyhow, yeah. So, what are some of your guys' memories from that?
No, you're right. March 2002.
I think one of mine was when we tried to break the economy
with our horses.
Our horse trading. Every time we got into combat, we made sure to round up all the horses afterwards.
Do you remember how many horses you had?
I think there were 2 teams of 25.
Yeah. I think after we raided the White Cloak camp, we had like whole strings.
Didn't we have? We had either sold a lot or we had left them in stables in Tyr as well.
Yeah, we had traded, and there were a couple of things we had done.
I think we had 2 teams of 25, and that's not counting our spare horses for when they got tired.
Yeah.
But
let's back up a little bit though. Like, do you remember your character's name, or at least what class you played?
Unfortunately,
I remember the class. I unfortunately don't remember his name off the top of my head. I was a woodsman armsman.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you like the woodsmans and the rangers.
Well, it was always either that or a spellcaster, and I think
we were covered.
Yeah, I think
we had 2.
Yeah, we had 2 spellcasters already.
Where's that, Brandon?
I don't remember. Were you?
I kind of want to say it was like Jarek or something like that.
Yeah,
Jarek. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
But
it's tickling old brain part.
All right, Chris, what about you?
I can't remember my name, but I know I was a Sanchin Seeker of the Truth.
Was that Morton Durant?
It might have been Morton Durant.
There it is, yep.
So named after the salt shaker
and a pack of cigarettes.
As I was Sanchin's spy as well.
Yeah.
As I had been reading. What was that? The Icewind Dale series.
Oh yeah, you were Drizzt.
Yeah, I was Drizzt Do'Urden.
But me and John were Sanchin's spies. I was a Wanderer Channeler, Wanderer Wilder. But that was the only time our status amongst the Sanchin hierarchy was ever mentioned.
Yeah. Well, that's an important plot point it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, we were
because you guys,
spies.
you dived in. You got fully invested into revenge, I suppose. But
by the time that it ended, I definitely didn't count myself as a Sanchin anymore.
Yeah, I went native.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember or not if I had achieved Blade Master with him, though.
You guys, if you were doing the Prestige classing,
not just the Prestige class, but I don't know if it. I don't think it was in single combat, but I do remember that I had killed that. And that's really where I think that break with Sanchin came, is because I killed the High Lord that was.
You killed who did you kill?
Yeah,
or is that another one?
I don't know who it was. Yeah, but I do remember that we had gone into the house, or into a house there, and there was a fight with some High Lord.
Yeah,
that. I think that at that time it was definitely influenced more by the series.
Yeah,
in that part of the story rather than the Prophecies of the Dragon book, but. It was. I think I damn near died though.
You guys damn near died a lot.
We were wounded from the start of the series all the way till the very end.
I think that's if I remember right, that's where the majority of mine came from, because I'd been either too far back to do anything or extremely lucky and not getting hurt until all of a sudden I was fighting that guy.
Yeah, and we didn't have anyone that could heal.
Yep.
Till like the very end, when I finally got my talent for healing and could cast it.
Yeah, so you guys were just surviving off of natural healing and the occasional healer's balm.
Yeah.
With nightly rubbings of healer's balm.
getting a line.
I need that 1d3 hit points back or whatever.
Another thing that like really stuck out to me in that one was the battle for the town with the White Cloaks coming in.
Oh yeah,
because we had I think we had spent like 5 or 6 hours planning out every
Yeah, we
detail
trained and
of that
armed
combat.
Yep.
Like,
And what was it?
went off
Brandon
flawlessly.
Brandon
Snuck them out.
snuck in. Yeah, went over the wall, snuck in, and with the help, you and him snuck everybody out, and there was no combat.
Yeah.
So disappointing
It was
from my perspective.
Although that was one of those times where we like the dice were on our side.
because you probably remember how that it was like successive checks.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was kind of setting you up for failure, basically.
Yeah, basically
Yeah.
they're fishing for a 1.
And he just
20s.
all the way through.
Yeah.
Well, not 20s all the way through, but
Yeah, it was like
it was
18s,
really
19s,
dang high.
20s. Yeah, it was. Everything just went as perfect as could be.
Yeah, and you have to obey the dice, so he's got to get out free.
I think you were all. I don't know if we were conscious enough to do it at that point, but I think you were penalizing him too, right? Or was that not? Because he had commoners with him.
Yeah, my memory of that's been.
He rolled high enough to just let you.
Yeah, a lot of it was that back in those early days, and it still is to a degree. You can only remember so much, but
roll high enough to impress the game master.
yeah, but
yeah, then after we got them out, like we set up pike walls and like murder holes in the town, and everything went off perfectly.
I forget what I think I had a bow, but I could also channel by that point.
Maybe that's where that was. Is the Sanchin when you first encounter the Sanchin? Maybe that's where I fought
at their secret camp.
Yeah, at their their the town that they had taken over.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I ended up fighting that guy, and I can't even remember. I think I was sneaking through, and I just happened to go into the inn, and he just walked in the room.
In him.
Yeah.
That was back when our role playing style was basically you just go and have combat.
Well, no, because I remember that we were sneaking in for something. I think it was to try and rescue somebody, right? Or try and get some information from about something. But I went into the inn because we had determined that was their headquarters, and
Was it that captured? Was it Aes Sedai or Wise Woman or something?
Yeah, it was at that point that same town that they had. I think we were looking for is what it ended up being. Is we were supposed to rescue her.
Random boss.
Yeah.
Well,
And,
Justin, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
To your point or your mention of our role playing style back in those days, I think you guys started it out very differently, but there was a side quest in there to return a prince that had fled from marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And one of your friendly NPCs was brutally murdered in it.
Yeah,
And
that broke Josiah.
Padishar.
Like I thought
Right?
Josiah was
Yeah.
actually going to start crying at that point. Like it affected him hard.
Well, every encounter you guys, that's the moment when you were like, we're done messing around.
Yeah.
And so you became like
That's
hardened.
campaign of slaughter. It was
Yeah,
Padishar,
that's
Creel.
the first one. Yeah.
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 I remember him like grabbing the prince and like screaming in his
Yeah.
face, and like he's actually screaming in
we-
real life.
Didn't we go like full speed on the horses back to the town and start?
I can't. Remember
I swear that
exactly.
we
But
went
yeah, we
back
did.
to a town and started killing people.
No, we've never with those characters. I don't remember ever killing anyone that didn't deserve killing. Right? We were always either attacked first.
Topless tower.
Yeah,
all
I
dark
think those guys deserved killing, though.
Didn't we
They
also
did deserve
like
it.
kill everyone in the house up by up in the Northlands with is it Tame's followers?
Yeah, they deserve killing.
That's right. We killed them too.
Well, that was another. Well, so that's the Arturo's Orchard, the lead up into Falme.
Yeah.
That was that chapter, and then what's the chapter after that?
So that's traveling. That'd be traveling from or to Falme.
And do you go to Tanchico?
Yeah,
after
then I
that
think
one?
we
Then
go to
Tanchico. Yeah.
So yeah, you guys had seen Jacob Carradine, and I remember some of the dislike maybe from the books, like being immediately there.
Yeah.
If we got the correct order.
Trying to remember there.
It's not too important.
Yeah.
So, like, on to the Chris, I don't think we've heard something you remember fondly from it. Or maybe we have.
Oh, no, I've been saying it the entire time we were playing the second one. My favorite part of Prophecies of the Dragon, which happens a bit towards the end there, is when we finally catch up to all those Dark Friends in the Topless Towers, and we took each one by one and threw them off the tower. That's like our peak vindictive point, where we had been just, we were all bruised and battered and tired.
Yeah.
But it demonstrates the power of role-playing.
Yeah.
Because we will likely all remember that people were thrown off the topless towers to our deathbed.
And the thing
How many of them did we capture up there?
All of them.
All of them.
And
That's
the
right.
thing I liked about it was that we captured the Lady Helene.
Yeah.
And before we tossed her off, we asked her daughter's permission, and she okayed it.
So we actually need a little
We actually
bit.
hauled her back up the tower just to throw her off. Like in this last run through, we meet her halfway down, but we hauled her up a tower to murder her.
We got to put some more backstory in there, because we established that friendly NPC was killed in a stupid manner.
Yeah.
It was just a little side quest. You guys were generating some extra money or whatever.
Yeah.
And he died. And middle of the way through the campaign, like it's around the time you free
Tame.
Mazrim Tame.
Yeah,
right?
that was where it happened.
That's
yeah.
where Josiah dies,
Yeah.
and we have I think that's our first player death ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was a butthead game master
And made him come back.
because he died, and I made him come back as a level 1 character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he played for a little while after that, and he just stopped playing. I mean, he might have went to college, but then,
Yeah.
It was just an excuse to stop playing.
I think you guys were level 3 or 4 at that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But like the Prince procced our vindictive trait, now the two Aes Sedai dark
Right.
friends that we're following.
Who you were on the trail of when you get to the topless towers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were
Everybody
wasting our
Finding
time.
out that Helene had been working for them
Yeah.
definitely set off the vindictive traits.
Like everyone was angry. Like my character had been shielded for like a week and a half before we get there because they actually got one of them off on me. Just everyone was angry, both in character and out of character.
And shortly after that, you figure out where these 2 women have fled, and that they have the artifice of Brazian, that the Dragon Reborn's been captured, and it's off to Dumai's Wells, where we reach the conclusion of that story. And
yeah. It's a
it was a
pretty
Bitter
sensitive subject.
Yeah.
what's the term for that type of
Bittersweet.
victory?
Bittersweet or yeah.
Yeah. Chris
Although,
said
I think I was the only one to die.
it. No.
Because you got knocked unconscious and was
and
found
then I
later.
got trampled by a bunch of Aiel that were running from the Ashaman.
In theory, we
Well,
yeah, we
never
never
we know
never
what
circled
really
back.
happened. I mean, it was Travis with his vindictive trait at that time.
Yeah, and Brandon's character had been knocked unconscious but stabilized right afterwards.
You
But
got rendered to mush.
yeah, my character didn't
were
know
you
that
at?
he was okay or not completely dead yet.
Okay.
And
I think I was knocked out too and stabilized.
or was it that you were trying to take care of him
No,
or catching up
he
or
never
something?
Made it
I
to
never
the
even
fight.
made it to the fight.
Yeah.
I got downed by the Aiel in the the
I healed
youngling.
you.
Wasn't it? Didn't
That-
I get hit by the younglings at
No,
that point?
it's that I healed you and your subdual went over
right.
your current.
Yeah. So basically, while we were riding, I do remember fighting the Aiel that popped up.
Yeah, you were hurt.
Yeah. And then I remember fighting younglings.
Yeah.
And that's the last that I got to play in that last session.
Yeah.
Because after that, I ended up getting knocked out from the healing. But
Yeah, if I'd known what we were riding into, I would have just let you.
yeah,
Let you
I'm
go.
trying to remember. Did we actually kill?
Yeah.
the
Yes,
Aes Sedai?
we
Okay.
did. But yeah, I was taking 4 Wrens around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be
that
noted
point, and-
that I suppose at that time we must have dropped our misunderstanding about concentration.
Yes.
But we were still using 2 weaves around, and there were 2.
As long as they were taking no other action,
Right,
yeah,
and
it
there
was
were
their
2
full
leaves
round.
around.
There's a full round attack.
And so, yeah, you were, which it should be noted at that time, your character had an absurd AC.
Yeah.
And was otherwise indestructible.
Yeah.
But
It's because he had horse armor. It was just actual like 50, 60 horses running around it
Didn't you have
constantly.
Masterpiece full plate or Power
It was
Rod?
Power Rod.
It was the Power Rot full plate from Jerichopen,
Plus
and
the armor proficiency.
I had the armor proficiency.
What was it, 32, 33?
No, it was only like 25 or
I thought it was in the
26 or
30s.
something
Maybe
like
I'm
that.
thinking of
But
Maddox or something.
Maddox is only 26.
Yeah, Gore,
But yeah.
Gore could get
Oh,
up
yeah,
to
there
30.
we go.
it was like a
32
25 or
34.
26. But Wheel of Time,
Yeah,
like,
that
that's
was a lot.
yeah, that means nothing under
Other
like,
than-
level 6 can hit you.
yeah, same level fighter. Yeah.
So these two women, which by the way, it should be noted, I think it was Krylin or Krylin
Yeah.
was the big bad as written, I believe. She was actually killed in Jerichopen, so you guys caught her.
Yeah.
So I think Lana made
Lana,
it our
My little battery. My precious pet.
Yeah, we'll learn more about the Lalana's actions in the second playthrough.
So you had the weaker of the two Aes Sedai, but it ended up being the right particular set of skills, as long as they're cheating and casting twice per
It was evened out. It's just that we didn't have enough channelers to
Yeah.
combat. I think the other stipulation was we needed multi-weave.
Yeah.
Was part
Yeah.
of it. So
But you know, that said, I felt like the ending had a finality to it. I mean, I know we talked maybe about continuing, but it was just such a broken group with the goal completed that you could call it its own story.
and where do you go from there?
Yeah.
At the time, I think book 7 was
Right.
that was the last book released, and it was kind of.
I feel that
Yeah.
honestly, for those characters, that was
death was the best ending.
yeah. I mean that was a very fitting end. I mean that was a complete story for where they started out. I mean, 2 Sanshin spies, a woodsman, and what was Brandon?
A woodsman.
I think it was an
And, yeah.
armsman to start, and then
And
I
then he
did
went
the
to
kind
Wolf
of
Brother, and
No, he was woodsman.
Brandon had
Yeah.
he made Wolf Brother with the last level he got, so
That's
he never
right.
got to
Yeah.
play
Yeah.
it.
And we also made Taverin with the last
There
last
you go.
fight. Yeah, we're all knocked unconscious. John's the only one surviving potentially, and then like Travis is like, oh, by the way, you're Taverin here, extra affinity for you, extra weave. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that concluded it. I liked at that time. I'll have to do that more in the future because the Mech Warrior one also ended with almost total party wipeout.
Party wipe.
Well,
You can call it a complete story.
I believe
if you end it that way.
I believe technically it was a party wipe,
Yeah,
except we burned whatever their equivalent of edge was.
yeah.
Luck. Was
I
it?
remember
Yeah.
Justin. I think you're the only character I remember because your like leg was pretty much useless or blown off, and one arm.
that was my Shadowrun character.
Was I got
If
the
I
end, I guess.
remember right, with the BattleTech one, we were in that
Restaurant.
Or
Yeah.
Mech Warrior, I guess, is the Mech Warrior role playing game.
Yeah,
yeah, we were in
like
a
you
restaurant.
blew up because you tossed open the lid
No,
on the
that's earlier.
Yeah, that was a different.
Yeah, this is his second character now. We're all in a restaurant. I'm recovering from getting hit by a car after falling down a fire escape.
Yep.
And we're discussing what to do. And they wheel in a cart with food on it, which is actually a light machine gun and a bomb, I believe.
The
right?
Mafia does this because you
Okay.
guys agreed to throw a match. You accepted
Yeah.
the money. You did not throw the match. It might have been because Brandon accidentally
Yeah, he-
headshotted the
Yeah,
Atlas.
Yeah, he
critical
one-shotted
the
it.
guy,
The plan.
and
Sorry,
Yeah.
the plan is we were going to win.
Yeah.
It's just that we were going to try to go slow so John's first character could try to defuse the bomb.
that's right. Except that, I screwed up and I detonated the bomb. That's how he died.
But it also didn't matter. Yeah, you opened up the suitcase bomb, but it didn't matter because in that amount of time, Brandon had already killed the opposing team.
Yeah.
Like, killed.
You're so lucky in that. Well, back to
Sorry, yeah.
Prophecies of the Dragon. I had a run through. I think it was over the course of 2 years, maybe. It was on and off as people could participate. And then it was done. And now, what is that?
So-
15 years later?
Yeah. What were some of your struggles running through that?
Well, learning how to handle pre-written material, which I think is a good exercise for every game master to do, because it's useful for a couple of reasons. First, because it will make you run scenarios that you wouldn't create on your own, and that's useful because it's not always certain that because you like what you create, it's going to be fun for the players. So you can get a sense that they'll like this whole segment, and you hated it when you were reading it as a game master. So it's good to have an idea of how that can disconnect sometimes. And the other part of it is to be able to deal with some of the poor writing decisions in the scenario on the fly, to be able to on the fly know your gaming group and adjust the scenario, So that's what was useful for me to do it, and that's what also made it a struggle, because that Prophecies of the Dragon was pretty linear, I guess you could
chugga,
right. But at the same time, I forgot where I was going with that.
At the same time, I would say that it didn't feel that way because you're given appropriate carrot,
right?
To go after, right? Like, especially if you're vindictive, like our group is. Once you get wronged once, you're basically chomping at the bit to try to catch up to whoever you're chasing.
Because another mistake for an early game master too is you're gonna make GTA Dungeons and Dragons version, right? And you're just gonna let your players loose in the world, and they're gonna love it. And this gave you an example of a very linear story based, from plot point to plot point, and that it can still be good. And in some ways is preferable if it has the carrot, right?
Yeah.
So
and then for everything else, try to find the middle ground.
Yeah, because you need both for sure.
Well, there's also something so daunting as a player when the GM goes, "All right, what do you do?" and you just started the campaign, basically.
Am I?
Yeah, well, you need to give them something. You can do that without putting them on a railroad track. But if you got to, I think Prophecy of the Dragon does a decent enough job giving you that target, and then kind of go like, well, how do you go about getting to point B from point A?
Yeah, the downside, I'm sure you remember, John, is there were tons of inconsistencies in there.
Yeah.
But that also teaches you something useful, because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, I think, to game mastering. So even though they were in there, it kind of taught me over time not to blame it. I had to look at it, be prepared, and adjust accordingly. And the player would never care. They should never care if something was wrong in the book. You fix it and you move on. That's your particular job. So I think because there were so many, I had to be able to do that.
Had to adapt and overcome.
Because there were a lot. So, but I guess that's all I have to say about that.
Why is it telling us to prepare weaves like a wizard?
So anyhow, 15 years later, is that the right amount of time or more?
About.
We are playing it again. We've recorded it. Why did you decide to run through it again? And why did we accept to play it again?
Well, I guess to answer your first question, let's see. Brandon had just finished the last session of the first part of his campaign. I had been going through the books again, and there was a section that I had just read. It's when the sea folk are talking about the other islands or lands that they visit, and there was mention of the Isle of the Madman. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I started looking into that more because the idea that there was an island that was so secretive that they're going to kill anybody that tries to come there. Plus the fact that their channelers seem completely mad. Like, not just the men, the women that hunt the men down, right? But the theory that I was reading was that there's got to be a city somewhere in there, right? Okay. And so that was the idea, is kind of get away from all the lore and the world. But then I started thinking about obvious offshoots as well. Like, what happens if Rand was another false dragon, right? So just kind of playing around with a couple ideas and talking with Chris about it, remembered back to all the fun that we had, and so that's when made the offer that in our downtime there with Sebastian just being born, and that run Wheel of Time campaign again. As far as why you guys agreed to it, you'd have to answer that.
Well, I was excited about it actually, because I love the Wheel of Time as a series, and my remembrances of our previous run were old enough that I couldn't remember fine details, and fond enough that I was ready to experience them again. This time from the other side of the game.
I was going to say now you're player.
Yeah. So I think probably why'd you decide to play the character you decided to play, Chris?
It was probably the first real game campaign where I felt something on behalf of my character, essentially. I was role-playing well enough, but still far from being good. But I think that was probably the first campaign where it started happening, where I was like, I'm not projecting any of my emotions onto this character. I'm in sync with this character. We both hate these damn Aes Sedai. What about you, Justin?
As far as why I decided to play it, I've always loved the world, and like Travis had said, it was far enough in the past that I remember bits and pieces of it, but not everything. And having a chance to not die and kill those stupid Aes Sedai.
You made it.
So why Wanderer?
This time I did just straight Woodsman and then Wolf Brother instead of Armsman.
Confused all the way through the campaign.
Yeah. Well, part of it was just that we had a Channeler, we had a Warrior, and I felt it gave me a chance to play a different type of Woodsman than the Woodsman that I played in Brandon's campaign just before. And I was still trying to step away from my old archetypes of Sorcerer, Warrior, or Cleric. Yeah.
What about you, Travis? Why you were Wanderer, correct?
Well, yeah, I think for the last few sets of characters I've made, I don't have any strong ideas going into it. And so I'll wait for everybody to pick what they're going to pick, and then I'll fill the strategic role. So yeah, I ended up being the rogue of the group again after Brandon's. And I wasn't particularly excited about doing that at first. It's not until I have some time to think about it where I can kind of extract a unique take on playing the Wanderer or the Rogue. And the good thing about those classes is if you think about it long enough, you can find a different way to play something you've played many, many times in the past.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't really pick it. I just filled the gap, and he ended up being a really fun character for me.
Yeah. I think out of all of the campaigns we've played so far, like this group of characters was one where we really played the characters a lot more.
Yeah, there's a lot of consistency to it, I felt like.
Yeah.
I honestly think that coming from Brandon's campaign, where there were some rules as far as how we were going to play, but the depth that I think that we've gotten to in there helped a lot in the Wheel of Time campaign as well.
Yeah, and it was nice also to have a world that I knew. I could just fit right into it, and I didn't have to wait for Brandon to describe it all to us. So like from the instant we started, I was ready to go. Not to say what is my D&D character's name?
Graham.
Yeah,
Graham. Well, not to say Graham that I don't have fun playing Graham or anything. He's got his own little character, but it was nice to know how the world worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always something to be said about that. I do remember. I apologize for going backwards here, but I remember during that first playthrough, I hadn't gotten very far into the book, saying I hadn't even been to Shadar Logoth, which is in the first book, and sorry, not the playthrough for Prophecy of the Dragon, the first play, but trying to get on track with where all of you guys were who knew that world. Yeah. It was frustrating, right? So I definitely can appreciate wanting to get into a world where you know what's happening, you know, what the myths are, what the cultures and the, you know, politics and policies of different areas are. What's would you say stood out to you the most
Through
that this most recent playthrough?
Actually, it is the characters. Like everybody was so strongly present in their role, and they were established fairly early on, and there was even growth to a certain degree. Like if you listen to Falk in the beginning, you know, 5 or 10 sessions, he's very naive and he's like asking me things about the world, and I'm lying to him, but then by the end he's slitting slave
He's stabbing him in the eye.
stabbing slave Black Aja Aes Sedai in the eye, and I think every character has parts like that. So yeah.
What about you, Justin?
Well, once again, playing the character, like trying to find a way to play that character growth as he went along. But I think Adina blowing up the White Cloaks was probably my most memorable moment.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's it definitely stands out as a hallmark or a trend-setting moment.
Yeah, I don't think in any campaign, regardless of how powerful we got, we've ever had a moment quite that brutal. Like, we've had long combats where we've killed a lot of enemies or things like that, but nothing quite as just blatantly destructive.
If I'm not mistaken, there was some fallout to that, right? I know Rafe went and got blind drunk
Yeah.
to block out the images of White Cloaks screaming and burning.
Yeah, and my character went and just kind of sat and stared off into nothing for the entire night.
Yeah, there is something to be said about the setting of Wheel of Time as opposed to something like D&D where you have alignment, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, what's truly evil in a world where
Matter of great debate.
one of the Forsaken gives up an entire city, not just a small city, like one of the largest cities.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Adina's lawful good. It says so on my character sheet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what about you, Chris? What stood out to you the most?
Oh man, there was a bunch of really good moments this time around. I think we were all pretty good at the role playing, but I'd say anytime Falk and Rafe would go off together getting hijinks, I was sending them off to see what the hell they'd do this time around, how they'd cause me trouble.
That's good, Chris. That does help me narrow it down to a scene for you, John. It would be when we happened to be wearing the colors that matched the Ashaman, was it? Or no? By pure chance. It was like Taverin, and I wasn't even Taverin. We weren't even Taverin, I should say. But yeah, the Kyrian sequence was done pretty well. And you actually have a particular talent as a game master of very evenly accepting the actions we decide to do without visible reaction to it, you know. Like you're kind of a blank slate, so we're just like, we'll do this, and you're like, okay, and you do it, you know. Like some game masters you get a read on and you can tell
the eye starts twitching.
Yeah, if you've gone off the rails, or if you're doing something they think is a waste of time, or you know, whatever. So you ran that all pretty well, because that's kind of if I remember right, running it, I was a little nervous about it because it's a fairly open-ended sequence, and on top of that, it's a lot of social stuff.
Yeah.
Which at the time I was running it was like a nightmare scenario. I'm like, what? Yeah. Where's the combat?
Well, also at the time you were running it, like not one of the characters wanted to be social.
Yeah,
like
right.
I had a character that I had, like that first playthrough, Morton Durant was supposed to be a social spy.
Yeah.
And by the time we get there, he's telling everyone to F off, and
Well, by that point, we had degenerated down to just
we were
assassins that were looking for someone to kill.
Bloodhounds.
It was being on the other end was actually pretty interesting. I know that in the past there's been a small few that I've game mastered, but I just it was always really difficult because there's a point like when you're making a character and you start taking on or figuring out what's cool about them is when I was trying to figure out characters for previous games. That would always happen, and it takes over, right? Yeah. And that's where you get what was it, Renraku guards with stun sticks if stun sticks did
stun instead of physical,
or physical instead of stun, but
yeah.
It was and that's the thing, is just going through and making those guards, because I was trying to do it from scratch. I think I was trying to play off what Justin was doing with one of his D&D campaigns at the time. But
the trolls, another mark that Justin has scarred us all with.
But this was, having it all written out, and with how it ends, it still leaves everything open for a continuation. Yeah. But there were lots of points in there that I genuinely enjoyed, and to Chris's point is seeing what you and Falk would get up to. I especially liked your I can't think of the word for it, but your bluffing ability to think about when that you knew everything that you guys were supposed to be doing, like in the ways, being the Camelin waterways, and everything in here is uncommon enough at that point to most, right? Other than maybe Adina there, that no one's really going to question too much, right? Because of just the awkwardness of it. But
also, I think it could just be that, if Adina hadn't been there, who because she was kind of filling the leadership role,
who would?
People would probably just look towards Rafe because he's saying something they want to hear.
His bluff never made it higher than a plus whatever his charisma.
It was good enough, and that's that also goes into with what you were saying there. Not be showing any reaction to what you guys are doing. Is I always expected that it wasn't going to follow the outline completely as in the book, and there were a lot of parts in there where it very falsely said basically the players are going to have no choice but to do this, but you guys will find a way to do something different. But
it doesn't help if the thing that they're saying we have no choice but to do is completely not set up appropriately anyway, right?
Maybe contrary to what the story has led us to.
It's like saying the players are going to walk in and trip over a lantern and catch the house on fire. How are you setting that up, book?
and that's one of the difficult parts about a pre-made as well is even going off of their characters. I don't feel that there was the same urgency and direness as when you ran us through it. It definitely had a different feel to it, but just going off of exactly what those characters, how it has them in there. Unfortunately, it's a numbers game more than anything, of not like what you roll, but how many enemies they can put against you, and they just never stacked it up, is what it seems like. But
I'm not speaking for all the players, but for myself, I guess the feeling of urgency was there for me. Adina was never not trying to push all the players onward. Do we rest here? No, we go on. Type of thing. So I definitely was feeling urgency. And as far as a bunch of the lower end monster or challenge feeling, I don't think that was supposed to be as big until you hit that last fight, and unfortunately we just barrel rolled them this time around.
Well, the only reason I wouldn't feel it sometimes was because there was Cho'Gath there and Dill. And they killed it because you were rolling all his criticals all the time.
Man, that was something that almost at one point I was thinking like, man, I shouldn't have introduced this this kid. I mean, it was supposed to play off of not just with Will in the past, but also hopefully throw a little bit more responsibility in, right?
Yeah.
As rather than just like roughnecking it everywhere, and but yeah. When you leave it to chance,
You should have had him wielding a crossbow and so that way it limited his attacks every other turn then.
Although he still ended up having like 20 more hit points than I had.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I tried to, after that first fight with the Shanchen, I definitely tried to play more towards however a kid would think rather than what I would do with like a hero character, right?
Well, I think it wasn't until after that battle that he started getting actually hit in combat.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of it was left to like stay back and guard Adina, things like that, right? As he knows, I kind of would picture that even though he's under the tutelage of Cho'Gath and Rafe and Falk to an extent, that anytime that he's hurt or when you guys stay at an inn, things like that, he's always with Adina.
Yeah.
Right. So
and he's always messing around. Like when he gets hurt, he starts kind of babying up real quick.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
But still, even then, like little kids have a false sense of immortality.
Yeah, and that, hopefully that kind of came through.
No, yeah, I liked Dill. He was a good character throughout.
Yeah.
I am still jealous of his crit, so.
Yeah, no.
And I'm jealous of his crits.
But the point
for
was,
anybody else,
when it came to the physical threats, like I was kind of in the back.
Yeah.
And I didn't really face them head on.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel too much. Like if Cho'Gath had gone down or we were deprived of our healing, like if you had gone down, then it might have been a different story,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's it.
Well, yeah, like part of my goal with Adina was to play the helpless damsel whenever we got in combat. That was going to be her thing until she actually was powerful or strong enough to take care of herself, or she needed to actually step up, like when we were fighting the Black Ajah, right? But yeah, for the most part, like I don't think I got hit for like maybe half the game, the first half of the game session or campaign. I think a Trolloc might have got me at one point or something, or a Dark Friend.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I just kind of damsel up and they just ignore me.
I had a much different experience than you guys. I think there were at least a half a dozen times, if not a dozen times, where I was down to within a single shot.
Yeah.
It killed me.
And there's a bunch of those times where you could have just asked for some healing.
He
doesn't trust the one power.
You almost drowned.
Yeah.
One time in Jerichopen,
Yeah.
or in the lead up to it. Yeah, there was some close calls. I think we got lucky in a sense as a game master. You have your tone, but then once the players have their hands on the story, it goes in this combined way. And luck can have a lot to do with that, because Rafe was able to keep up his buffoonery throughout because somehow, probably Dark One's own luck helped to a great extent. I could keep continuing on correctly, and not getting killed.
Like, it's written in several places in Adina's journal that he's a buffoon, a braggart, and arrogant liar, and I think it's part of his character. Like, I think if Rafe didn't feel like he felt like he was in control, like it would kind of cripple him.
Yeah.
Right. He always, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like, it's not my character, so I don't know the inner workings of him, but he seems like one of those types of hustlers that have to keep hustling.
Yeah. Well, I'm, when I make a character, or it's kind of a basic character design rule, like if you were writing one or whatever, but you pick 2 qualities and 1 flaw.
Yeah.
And that's like your basic thing. And I just kind of focused on his flaw a little bit more, which is, it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. So, and what that is certain people, when they begin to learn something, they will be their most certain about all of the facets of knowledge that there is about it. So they'll say, without qualification, these absolute statements that end up being wrong because they actually know so little. So I spread out his skill points
like evenly. So they were all really low in all these different skills, and he acted like he knew everything. And then I picked one of your skills and put ranks in it so I could act like I knew more than you. And if I could have done it with one of yours, I would have, but I think I couldn't do
You
that.
kind of did, though, like leading him through the ways and things like the old tongue.
But actually, that's Rafe is nothing without the interplay.
Yeah.
You know, because like without Adina there, it doesn't work the
You
same.
have to act
you know.
as like his foil.
Without Falk to be my willing companion, and then later on, sort of the leader, the instigator, it wouldn't have been the same. And you know, without Cho'Gath to break character one time and run off with Rafe, it wouldn't have been the ultimate victory for my character that whole campaign was.
And that immediately cemented him as a all-encompassing, like I don't know,
Disturber of the
corruptor.
peace.
Yeah, that he even corrupted Cho'Gath, who Adina had come to like basically rely on.
Yeah, that was your rock in the group there.
I wouldn't even say rock. It was more like thug
constant.
number one or number two or whatever from or number one from like Star Trek. Like Adina snaps and Cho'Gath starts doing what Cho'Gath thinks he needs to do.
Yeah.
You know.
And the only reason that Cho'Gath went with you was because I couldn't leave the inn.
Well, yeah, I
Forbade you.
Yeah.
Well,
because you had called out my name as we were fleeing.
fuck.
Look, wait.
Let's get some game master perspective for these final minutes we have here, John. You started it out with like what was our favorite sequence or whatnot. What from the game master point of view, what did you enjoy the most?
Really, it falls in line with what everybody else seemed to enjoy. Is I think that the characters worked really well together. There's always there always seems to be this pressure on a player that you would think as a player that there's a lot of pressure on the game master. There's a lot of pressure on a player though too, because when I do open it up, and I know Chris had talked about it a little bit before, but I would open it up to okay, this is where you're at now. Here's the description. What do you guys do, right? And that puts a lot of pressure back on you guys because either not having time to think about what your next action should be, or not wanting to step out of your character role, right? And so, just being able to see, there's an equal amount of it's kind of a balancing act, I guess. From game master to player, so it gives me a different perspective when we're playing too, right? So that was something that I had really liked. And as far as like scenes, let's see, there was quite a few, but the one that I really enjoyed was the original trip through the ways, and then the interaction in Maheen and Ilian, between kind of everybody here. But it really helped showcase more what your characters, the real characteristics of your player was.
I want to actually highlight that because if I remember correctly, during that time we had two sessions. One where Justin was absent, but we played, and then I think the following one Brandon was absent, but we played. Yeah. And you could feel the pace kind of slow down. Yet at the same time, we had a lot of fun and we expanded our characters. So it's something interesting to think about when we're missing a player and your campaign is situated in a part where you can really expand out what can happen. That is what you should take advantage of. Seize it and squeeze all the juice out of what would have just been a narration normally.
Yeah, and what's interesting also with those parts is those sections were nowhere in that book.
Right.
As So I mean, knowing that Justin was going to be out, knowing that Brandon was going to be out, is take some time to think about it, and it's really by pure chance because I don't know if I had showed you guys, but I had a whole section on where you would end up in the ways based off of what you were rolling when you got to those pedestals, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's about 4 to 5 rolls that I would make after you would make your roll to figure out where you were going, and luckily you guys ended up
right,
still on this side of the spine of the world and not in the blight. Right.
What would the camp? Did you have like Shara and Shanshan on there too?
Yeah. I had a lot of different sections, and I actually had written out a whole kind of offshoot campaigns in case you guys ended up in places like that. But and that's why I can see this continuing after the story, right? Is not only are you guys all in good health, relatively, other than
as well.
a lightning strike, I think.
That hurt.
I think I healed you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It still hurt.
No, it didn't. You're fine.
But it's I think that it kind of gave me the confidence as well, because that's one of the reasons why I avoided game mastering in throughout a lot of the time, is just didn't think that I could give you guys something, right?
Yeah.
But after seeing the work I was able to do with those offshoots, and even the little bit of the traveling narrative that we had to go through, it's like, I think that having played as often as we have, or as much as we have, gave me the confidence to give it a shot. And
I was impressed. 30 sessions is a significant duration to go as a game master. I mean, that's a lot. You just get more and more fatigued, in my experience, as you go, and you have that ability. I think that serves you quite well. So,
and personally, I'd say 30 sessions where I wasn't bored once.
Yeah,
I looked forward to it, and I don't know, there's something about Adina where I really like her character, and it's kind of messed up Casimir in Brandon's game for me, because they were very similar. They're both kind of more logical thinking and kind of cold and distant because of it. It's just that, I don't know, like, now it feels like I'm trying to play Adina when I'm playing Casimir, and so now I'm at a loss for what to do.
All right, we got just a couple of minutes. John, can you tell us anything of what the future might hold for Cho'Gath, Adina, Falk, and Rafe?
So there's been a couple ideas that I've been tossing around, and one of them is actually goes back to the beginning thought of a campaign for Wheel of Time, which is Isle of the Madman, right?
Yeah.
Is I for some reason I'm drawn to that, and just to explore uncharted territory, right? I really, what happens in the first game session that we come back, that's going to determine where it goes. So right now I've been working on writing out 5 or 6 different scenarios on where this could take us based on what I feel you guys are going to do, right? So we'll see if any of that holds true, though.
All right, well, thanks for getting together, guys, and having this discussion.
Yeah.
Thanks, John, for running that campaign. It's pretty darn epic.
I'm looking forward to the third time.
Yeah. Justin
How
and
old will
Chris.
we be then? We'll be in our 50s?
Yeah. And I guess thanks, Robert Jordan, for having
Yeah.
the Wheel of Time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a Deathwatch production. Thank you for listening.